We usually ask a future-facing question. And because you're sort of in the world of developer education and you're thinking a lot about building these courses, um, and we've talked already about how like the times are changing. There are LLMs now. People are like coding differently. They're thinking about how they build products differently. And I'm curious for you, how do you see like developer education evolving in the coming years?
That's a great question. I do think, like, so I mentioned I've been converting my blog to TypeScript. I am not a TypeScript expert. Like, years and years ago, I used to use Flow. At Khan Academy, we used Flow. So I learned the basics of working with the type system then. And I learned a bit of TypeScript at my next job, and I've been using it haphazardly in my blog. But this summer was really when I started, or summer 2024, last summer, was when I really decided that I was going to learn this thing. And I was actually like, it was remarkable to me how useful it was to have ChatGPT or Claude, that I could be like, hey, I have this situation. I don't know how to type it, right? I have this weird situation. Discriminated unions, I've heard people say, what is that? Like, can I use that here? And you have to sort of be very critical with the output you get, because sometimes it's just complete nonsense. But as long as you have like the analogy I like to use is like you're a member of the jury, and like the ChatGPT is the lawyer trying to convince you of their client's guilt. And you really like, you're not just going to accept what they tell you. You're going to like really think about like, okay, does this make sense? But if you use it that way, it really is wonderful. Like, it's a great way to at least point you in the right direction, right? It may not give you the perfect answer, but it'll give you the terms you can then search for to find the answer. That said, there still, I think, will always be a case because, it's very like call and response. It's very question and answer. If you have a low level tangible thing, like I have this specific problem I don't know how to do, it can help you solve that problem. It won't tell you like, how to build an application or like what technologies you should be using. It's not so good for like providing a curriculum and narrowing down, because there's a whole world of things you can learn. This is what I think was so beneficial of boot camps and even like online curriculums like the Odin Project. Just narrowing down what people need to learn, right? Like people who are getting started have no idea what's important and what's not important, and ChatGPT sure as heck doesn't know. So I think there will always be a role for instructors in guiding someone through the high level stuff, right? And then they can rely on AI for the low level, filling in the gaps or answering questions. So like personally, as a course creator, I'm not really worried. Like I think I've, like everything else, right? You see discussions on how like there will never need to be X again because now there is this tool. I don't quite think that's true. And actually, I think they can work really well together. Like as an instructor, it may be that I can leverage some of this in my course platform and not only like lighten my own load in terms of how many questions I have to answer, but provide better experience because they don't have to wait, the hours or days it might take me to see it and respond. So I think there is like my optimist view of this is that they'll actually sit really well together. And there's always going to be opportunities for people that know how to teach to keep doing that.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. And there was like one thing I remember the first time I used ChatGPT is like the thing that struck me is that, that old adage, like there are no stupid questions. Well, like there are people who really don't want to ask certain questions in context, like in a classroom, because they're afraid of feeling stupid. I mean, it's a real social thing. And like,
right.
Asking questions to an LLM feels completely different. They don't get tired. You can ask them endless follow-up questions and like they're not going to judge you for it. It's like fine. And that was like a real like shift for me thinking about like, oh wait, so this is going to be an ungated like way for people to like ask questions. And I think the other interesting thing is because it's conversational, I hope that this gets people in the habit of asking better questions. They have all this practice asking questions to get the right sort of information. I'm hoping that like it helps people frame questions better over time, which again, hopefully will lead to just like improved learning. But I guess
that's so interesting. Like you're right, because, and this is like, I think anyone who's worked as a developer and haven't had any sort of like interfacing with end users, right? If you've worked like, at one of my jobs, we would do tech support. Like, so every developer would have like a support role or a support shift as part of their job. And you learn that like a lot of people don't really know how to like provide a bug report, right? Like that's not, even now, like I teach software developers. So often I'll get a submission that like website is broken. Like that'll be the support ticket. Like, okay, tell me a bit more, please. So it's interesting, yeah, because if you take that approach with a chatbot, you're not going to get very good output, right? Like it does sort of show you how to tailor your question, and maybe that will sort of translate to human communication as well. So that's really interesting. I think that like the thing that I do worry about is, like I mentioned, right? The way that I think is really advantageous to use these tools is to think really critically, right? I've been using Cursor more, and I catch myself like, I know what I have to do, but it's a lot of typing and I'm too lazy. So I throw it in the chatbot and it spits out 120 lines. And I'm so tempted to be like, I'm sure it's fine. Just accept the changes. Don't even read it. And I worry people are like handing over the keys a little bit too much. And the problem with that, like, that's great if it works 100% of the time, but it doesn't. And you're going to reach a point now where all of a sudden the tool doesn't work. And if you don't have that ability to analyze it, if you haven't been sort of analyzing it all along, you're going to find yourself in kind of a rough spot. But I think that maybe that problem solves itself. Like someone has a couple bad experiences like that. Maybe that is, maybe this is all, it'll be self-reinforcing in that way.
We'll see. Yeah, I don't know. I am worried about the inherent laziness of people.